doing something a little different. DarkMatter and I have this project, well, he's working on that I'm kind of helping him with, that has to do with people that have been shunned or disowned by family members because they have chosen to leave the religion that they grew up in or that their family is involved in. So we have some really amazing guests here tonight to tell us their stories and offer some questions too. I'm just gonna really quick, if everybody could just introduce themselves, like hi, my name is, and what they do, that would be great. We'll start with you, ExCultBaby. People that have been shunned or
Okay, hi,
disowned
I'm Rudy.
by family.
I go by ExCultBaby online. I'm an ex Jehovah's Witness, now atheist, and I am a YouTuber, kind of, sort of. That's what I do.
And everybody's links, by the way, are in are down below, so you can find all of us either on Twitter or YouTube. So that'll be helpful. Thank you so much for coming, Rudy. We'll move on to Telltale. Owen.
Yeah, I am Owen. I have the Telltale channel, as aforementioned, ex Jehovah's Witness. I figure some people probably know of me for my ex Jehovah's Witness content. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Next is Ash PastelAce, who is kind of new to the community. So welcome.
Yeah, I'm Ash PastelAce or Cosmic Ashes, whatever. I am also an ex Jehovah's Witness. I stream, do a lot of drawing. I'm working on the whole YouTube bit, but we're getting there.
Welcome. It's good to have you. And we have Jen with an N, with one N. Sorry.
Yes, Jen with one N. Hi, I'm Jen. I am a former Baptist. Young man out. I deconverted in my late 20s, early 30s, and now I just do hobby YouTubing and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. And then John, DarkMatter, do you want to tell everybody the idea of what we're doing here and why?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to do this is because um, you know we all have to recognize areas in which you know we should defer to others who have more knowledge and experience, and that's why I'm doing this, is because I've pretty much always been an atheist, and that didn't really matter in my family. Nobody cared. But recently I saw a letter from someone got from their parents who disowned them because they became an atheist, and um, it just really bothered me because that's so foreign to me, the concept of disowning a loved family member, your own child, for not believing in the religion that you believe, and it kind of inspired me to maybe to want to try to make a video that they could send to them that would advocate for them and speak for them in a way that will be listened to. And I realize I can't do that with my usual confrontational ways of arguing philosophy and religion. And so that's why I wanted to turn to people who have experience with this and approach this one a little bit differently than usual.
Yeah, I follow along the same line. No, I mean, I was raised Catholic, but I basically never believed, and obviously trying to get advice and experience from people that have actually lived it is more helpful than attempting to figure it out ourselves. So that's why we reached out to these lovely members of the community. And I thought before we get into questions, we would start just with a little bit of background. Everybody could give us a little bit of information about just the story on how you were disowned, when, what happened, that kind of thing. Anybody want to volunteer to start?
I can go if you guys want. Will that
Yeah.
work?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Owen.
Okay, no problem. So I guess the idea is to kind of tell you the story of like me getting out of the religion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was born into Jehovah's Witnesses. My parents were Jehovah's Witnesses when I think so. There were a total of 4 of us, a sister and 2 older brothers, is what I have. And my parents became Jehovah's Witnesses right in the middle. 2 of my siblings were born before they joined, and then me and my brother after. So I was fully immersed in the religion my entire life. I really, truly, deeply believed it to the bottom of my heart. So much so that I really dedicated my life to Jehovah. Got baptized at, I think, 14. I was actually the first kind of kid in my congregation to get baptized. And then everyone else followed suit after I did. And yeah, I fully lived the life. I read the books, I studied the magazines, I went door knocking. I was about to auxiliary pioneer, which means get 50 hours a month door knocking. And then hopefully that was going to lead into pioneering, which is a commitment of 50 hours a month for 12 consecutive months. It's like the next level in Jehovah's Witness culture. But I ended up, so I homeschooled for like 3 or 4 years when I was a teenager. About 15 or 16 years old, I went back to public school for the first time and started realizing that there was a whole world outside of what I had been experiencing. I made my first friends there and started hanging out with people outside the religion and started to realize how completely restrictive it was. And I slowly but surely stopped going to meetings, stopped knocking on doors, and just started living my life. I eventually, when I was almost 18, I was 17, I started going to high school parties and hanging out with, fellow kids my age, basically. And that's the point at which the elders started watching me and asking questions and calling. And there was a kid in my congregation who's roughly my age, and he was watching me in high school and reporting things back to the elders.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they basically started to stalk me. So I finally just went to them and told them, I smoked a cigarette. I've been drinking alcohol. I mean, it was just being a kid. I wasn't hooked on cigarettes. I wasn't hooked on alcohol or anything. It was just, I went to a party and did these things. And that was like so far past the line that they just fellowshipped me pretty much immediately. They called me up for what they call a judicial committee. That's 3 elders in a room asking you invasive questions about your life and all of the things that you've done. And they decide whether or not they're going to let you stay a part of the religion or not. They decided not to let me stay a part of the religion at that time, though I did want to remain a part at the time. I was asking them to give me a chance to, stay in the religion, reprove me instead, tell people to back off and be careful around me rather than cut all communication. But no, they decided to go the disfellowshipping route, and I was kicked out of my I was kicked out of my house on my 18th birthday, and that was not easy. I had spent a couple years building friendships with people, not super close, but a little bit. So there was somebody I knew from high school, and I asked them if I could stay with them. They lived with their grandparents. I had to climb in their window every night and sleep in there without their parents, without their grandparents knowing. And you would be surprised what goes into that, trying not to get caught. So like using the bathroom at scheduled times when everybody is asleep or in another room. The person who's bringing food back to their bedroom to eat so that I could eat too. I mean, it was an incredibly challenging endeavor, challenging part of my life, and it was all because Jehovah's Witnesses held this ultimatum over my head: either follow our rules or we will wreck your entire life from the ground up. And I wanted to be on my own and do my own thing, and so that's exactly what they did. They wrecked my life from the ground up. Now that's not where the story ends, of course. Obviously, I finally clawed my way back, from the brink. Like I've pretty well established myself. I'm living decently. I'm not piss poor anymore like I was. I am surviving now. So things did get better for me eventually, but it doesn't always get better for everybody. And there are a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses out there deeply struggling in the exact same situation. So that's my story.
Um, it just seems so weird to me that they would forcefully push you out. You would think like so many religions want to keep as many members as possible. So that just surprises me. We have a question for you, Owen, really quick,
Okay.
from Junie. It says, how had life been since leaving your old town because of what happened? Anything that you miss?
Oh, yeah. Let me give a little context to that. So what happened was about a year ago. Actually, it's been 11 months now, I think. My daughter's health class teacher started saying negative stuff about atheists, saying that, that she doesn't understand how people can not believe in God. It's shocking, but they'll find out one day, and stuff like that in health class. And saying anti-LGBT stuff about how she doesn't agree with that lifestyle and all. It was terrible. So anyway, we reported the teacher to the school board. We reported her through FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation, and yeah, the whole town turned against us. I lived in a town of 3,400 people, and 1,900 people were on a Facebook page that was like dedicated to doxing me and all kinds of crazy stuff. So we literally had to like flee for our lives. I won't get into too much detail now, but we ended up moving out of the state completely, and things are significantly better now. I'm so glad I got out of that place. It was a dead end from the beginning, that place was. And if there wasn't some crazy event that took place to get us out, I don't know that I ever would have left, There's so many more opportunities for my family outside of that place. So there's the answer. I don't think there's anything I missed there.
You need a little bit of a push. I know, not to bring up my own stuff, but being in an abusive situation, it took a big push to get us out, and sometimes we just get stuck. So I'm glad that you guys did, although I remember how scary it was for you. So I'm really sorry. But thank you. So
it turned out for the best.
Just in terms of so like your entire family disowned. I know your mother will basically have nothing to do with you.
Right.
They actually said to you, we will not speak to you unless you do such and unless you come back to the church or whatever. How did that happen?
Yeah. When I was officially kicked out, 18 years old, I was kicked out of my house on my 18th birthday. And in the following 12 months after that, basically everybody in my life drew a line. Either they were going to talk to me or they weren't. And my brother... let me just preface this by saying everybody who was in my family is now out of the religion. Every one of them except my mom. She's the last remaining Jehovah's Witness. So I've talked to every one of my relatives who was in it, and they've all apologized for this at one point or another. So I hold no grudges about what happened. They were brainwashed too, at the time. But my brother did tell me at the time that I was living a terrible life and that I'm worthless, and I asked him if he would help me get a job in the tech sector because he worked in the tech sector. and he said he wouldn't recommend me to anybody because I'm ruining my life, and he doesn't want anything to do with me and not to call him again, basically.
Wow.
My sister just stopped talking to me entirely. Yeah, my entire family, every one of them shunned me after that. But my aunt, my cousins, my sister, my two brothers, and eventually my dad all eventually left the religion and talked to me at one point or another after leaving. My mom is the very last one inside, and she does heavily shun me and make my life miserable every way she possibly can. And I think at this point in my life, it's my disappointment in that is turning to cold rage rather than disappointment with my mom. So yeah, that's where it is right now.
Yeah, you posted a video last year where you and your daughter were attempting to communicate with your mother, and just the absolute vitriol that came from her, even though you could tell from her side she thought she was the one in the right. But to speak to anybody like that, let alone your own child, I mean, I have an 18-year-old myself. I cannot imagine there's nothing in this world that he could do or say that would make me want to push him out of my life, let alone speak to him with such hate and cause him pain like that. And
Yeah,
it's just such a hard thing to kind of comprehend. So
yeah, it is. It's pretty sad. It actually got a lot worse after that. Like there are other things that she's done that I haven't even talked about on my main channel, but because it's too complicated and it just relates to her being a terrible person. But yeah, it just gets worse and worse with her. So I'm doing everything that I can to cut her out of my life now. Now that it's turned from sadness to cold rage, I have reversed it after 10 years. I don't want anything to do with her at this point.
Good for you. And there's just one more question. Are you in a more tolerant environment where you're living? I guess they just want to know if you're in a better community.
I am. It's so much better. Oh my God. Just I live in New York City now. The place is so diverse and welcoming, and just it's the best. It is absolutely the best. Although I don't really I've never associated with like my neighbors or whatever, you know. I've never like made close friends with them. My policy has always been to keep to myself so that I don't, like, I don't know, anger somebody who I have to live next to for the next year or 2 or 5 or 10.
Yeah.
So I don't need to get involved with them, and I don't really, but if I do need something, you know, the neighbor is there. They're all so cool here. I absolutely love it. You know, I can wear like a pride related outfit if I want, and I will get high fives instead of dark stares. You know, that's a really distinct difference. So yeah, it's much better here.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. If you don't mind, you were kind of living in the South before too, as opposed to New York now, which is, I live in the South currently. I'm from New England, so I know the difference. There really is a huge difference. So
there is. Even the conservatives in New England are different than the conservatives in the South. You know, like there's just a difference there. Even the Trump supporters up north and down south are different.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. We will move on to PastelAce next. Ash, would you mind just sharing a little bit with us, please?
Okay. Well, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. It goes through generations in my family. I don't know how far back it goes, but I know my grandpa and all of his siblings and all of their kids, and thus, so my dad and his kids. Both of my parents were baptized. I think not the whole life for all of my siblings, but at least my whole life, because I have 2 older siblings and 1 younger sibling. But my parents actually both got disfellowshipped when I was 10 years old. But my extended family continued to pursue me having a relationship with Jehovah. My older sister and my older brother were both well out of it, had their time. out in the world, especially as teenagers, and just never went in. But I moved to a really small town when I was 12, and I lived a couple blocks away from my cousins. So they started picking me up and taking me to the meetings when I was 12, and also had a Bible study set up for me because my home situation was not good. My relationship with my dad is better now, but he definitely was really abusive growing up, and so was my mom until she left. They got a divorce, and that's when my extended family really stepped in to pull me into the religion. And it was at the time a saving grace. It kept me alive as long as it needed to. Then I got baptized at 14. And from there, I was really in it when I was in high school, to the point that when I was 16, I started homeschooling just to get out of that environment, because everybody was telling me, you know, you don't want to hang out with school kids. You don't want to be around them. They're not good for you. You want to spend your time around witnesses. So I started homeschooling, started working a job, spent a lot of time out in service where I could, was making all the meetings, and I was really involved in it, as well as I had a witness that I was interested in for a long time, that we were pretty much dating long distance, even though we shouldn't have been dating at the age that we were at, according to witnesses. But I was really, really in it up until I was 18, and that's when COVID hit and everything with Zoom came in, and not having that daily programming of going just on that hamster wheel. Every meeting, every time out in service really started to pull me out of it. But I was what they call PMO, so physically in, mentally out. I had checked out as soon as we went over to Zoom, and I didn't have to participate anymore. But I was still dating this person, and actually ended up getting married when I was 19 last summer. But things started to really go south from there. It was a really bad relationship, and that's what really caused me to step out, because I had to step out. I wasn't going to continue living with someone who was abusive, and he was a witness. We were in it together, although he had made indications to me, and we had discussed leaving together as well, but it went south within a few months, and I pretty much had to pack up all my stuff and move in with my sister, because I'm just thankful that my siblings are out of it, so at least I have their support. But yeah, so I have been out for probably about 6 months now. Wow. Because I had to go. But from there, I mean, completely no contact. I was supposed to be the maid of honor in my cousin's wedding, and she doesn't talk to me anymore. I found out about her engagement through Facebook, and then was just seeing snippets here and there when she got married a few months later. But it was pretty much just cold. My aunt, like, my family has blocked my older sister, knowing that I went straight to her when I left. It's been pretty much all cut contact. I've had a little contact with my cousin, and I pretty much warned her before I left my soon-to-be ex-husband. I said, look, I'm going, and no one is stopping me. I'm going to find happiness somewhere else.
Good for you. I'm sorry that you lost so many people in your life, but that took, especially at your age, that took a lot of strength. Thank you, Ash. Rudy?
So I was also raised a Jehovah's Witness. I am third generation. My grandparents, siblings, brothers, sisters, aunts and uncles, cousins on both sides of my family are all current active Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as I know. I left the religion when I should say I was disfellowshipped when I was disfellowshipped in late 2017, and I didn't actually deconvert until spring or summer of 2018. But at that point, I was 18 years old, It was pretty much the only life I'd ever known, and I'm your classic case of leaving religion because I wanted to sin. It's obviously more complicated than that, but I found out that I was queer as a high schooler. I made friends with other queer kids in high school. I was interested in dating. I was somewhat interested in sex. I was interested in just being a lot more social than I was, because a lot of my Jehovah's Witness friends lived, 20 minutes or more away, and I was homeschooled and my parents were pretty strict. So it was always like, you need at least 3 business days before you can hang out with somebody. 3 business days notice. That wasn't a rule, but it just was like, I couldn't just hang out with people. I didn't have a driver's license. I lived in a city with a bus system, so I didn't need to drive to get to work. My father was an elder, so he was a leader in the congregation. Definitely made my life kind of miserable as far as just a lot of rules and a lot of expectations. I have ADHD. My family has known this pretty much since I was born, and I wasn't officially diagnosed until I was 10, but everybody kind of knew. They just needed the diagnosis so they could get me on medication. But I've never... It was so difficult to do the amount of studying that is required to be a Jehovah's Witness. It was so difficult, and I always felt like a failure. I always felt like I wasn't doing enough, and then I would go to an assembly or convention, and I would come out of it on this spiritual high, like, yes, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to change the way I do everything, and I'm going to be the best Jehovah's Witness that I can be, and I got so much faith. And then when I tried to put it into practice, I felt, again, like a failure, and I was praying for help, and I wasn't getting it, and I'm just like, why can't I do this? And it really just made my self-esteem just terrible. So between like knowing that I'm queer and knowing that I want different things out of life than a Jehovah's Witness can have, and also not feeling like I could be a successful Jehovah's Witness because I wasn't living up to these expectations. I didn't get baptized until I was 15, which is a little bit late, especially for like an elder's kid. So it was... I just had really rough self-esteem issues, and when I finally one day I decided to move out. It was pretty much on a whim. Like, I had decided months before that I wanted to move out, but I hadn't actually made any plans to move out. And then one day I got into a fight with my dad, and he said that my room being messy was unchristian. Like, it was unchristian,
What?
ungodly, unholy that I had a messy lifestyle and that I didn't keep... Like, the expectations of being a Jehovah's Witness are ridiculous. They really are, especially when your dad's an elder. So that was kind of the last straw for me, of just being like, I can't live my life like this. I can't live my life with these expectations. I'm not like actively suicidal, but I wouldn't mind just dying in my sleep either. Like, I had no plans for the future. I had no expectations for myself. I didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. I was pretty sure I was just going to get destroyed in Armageddon. And so at that point, I was like, I might as well spend the last couple of years of my life before the world ends trying to enjoy it, rather than constantly failing and being miserable. So I moved out. And I was still a believer, obviously, but I was just tired of that cycle of misery and self-hatred. And so I got to be out as queer for the first time, which felt really good. And I found out very quickly that I did not miss all the meetings and all the preaching and all the... Like, I thought that it was going to feel like a hole in my schedule, but it didn't. Like, the first week that I realized, I didn't do any spiritual activities at all. It didn't feel like anything was missing. I was disfellowshipped on the basis of losing my virginity to my boyfriend at the time. And that was very uncomfortable. I asked the 3 elders who were in charge of my judicial committee, if my dad could be in the room with me, because he told me if they allowed it that he would sit there with me, and they said no. So I was asked a lot of really uncomfortable questions. One of them even accused me of lying when I said that, like, oh, we did this and then we stopped. He was like, I don't think you did. And I was like, I've already told you this much information.
Yeah.
What purpose would lying about the details serve in this? And towards the end of the judicial meeting, they asked me, are you repentant? And I answered honestly. I said, am I like humiliated? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I feel shame? Yes. Do I regret it? No. And I'm probably going to do it again.
Nice.
So I knew even when I left the judicial meeting that I was going to be disfellowshipped, because I was just, I knew that was the reality of it. I was just honest, like, I'm tired of pretending to be something I'm not and pretending not to want the things that I want. And after that came the shunning, which was probably the most brutal thing of it, because that's the part that's been affecting me for years and years afterwards. My entire family shuns me. At the time that I left, I had a cousin and an aunt who were not witnesses, but now they are. My aunt had been disfellowshipped and she returned, and my cousin had never been baptized and she decided to get baptized. So while I was temporarily homeless, I'd stayed with them in their house. But now I asked my cousin, hey, do you want to get lunch sometime? And she said, oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness again. Sorry, we can't talk anymore. So all of that was really, really brutal on me psychologically. It still kind of is, but I'm at a much more accepting stage now. The only parts of it that I really have a constant struggle with is my relationship with my mother.
Mhm.
Because for the longest time, she was the only member of my family that I had any amount of contact with. And there was a point a few months ago, I got married. And the day after the wedding, which nobody in my family attended, my mother texted me and asked me for pictures from the wedding. And I finally told her, you know what? I want to have a relationship with you, but you need to either commit to wanting to have a relationship with me or not. Because I just had my wedding yesterday and you could have been there and you weren't.
Yeah.
So how dare you ask me for photos the next day? Like, you could have been there taking them yourself. And so she's the only person in my family that I feel that I cut off, because I had to tell her, like, you know what, if you want to have like a secret relationship with me or something where we're still mother and child, we can do that, but that's not what's happening right now. What's happening right now is, like, you talk to me when it's convenient for you, and you have this little amount of communication that you're willing to give me, but you're not willing to fully commit to just being a mother to me again. And I can't, like, that was more torture to me than the rest of my family just not talking to me at all. So yeah, now I have a lot of found family, but my biological family is not in my life.
I totally get the found family thing. In fact, that's the community here has become my own. But congratulations on the wedding, by the way. Before we get to Jen, I just want to quickly point out that I think it's interesting that for all three of our Jehovah's Witnesses here, it was something that happened when you guys were so young. It was almost like you became an adult and you were exposed to the outside world and realized there's more to it than just the, I don't want to say cult. I don't want to use that word.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a fine word to use.
I know Owen does his, what is the scale called?
The bite model?
Yes,
What
the
we're
bite
talking
model.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, you do a lot of that breaking down, and yeah, basically being able to get to that point where you are not only finding yourself as an adult, but being exposed to the outside world. I want to compare it to Scientology a little bit, because in Scientology they try so hard to keep you from that exposure. From They don't even want you going online to see anything else.
Yeah,
So
and
I
just to add to that a little bit. Wait, Ash, how old were you when you got baptized?
I was 14.
Okay, and Owen, how old were you?
14 roughly, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the oldest at 15, and I
And
saw
an
9-year-olds.
elder's kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that was really late for an elder's kid. Was 15. Ooh. And I saw 9-year-olds get baptized. I mean, they
Me too.
really did make a conscious effort to get them to make a lifelong commitment before they knew literally anything about the rest of the world. That is on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they
My
celebrate them. I'm sorry. Do you want to go?
I say my cousin got baptized at 11. My younger cousin and my other cousin got baptized at, I think, 9 or 10. As she wasn't an elder's kid at the time, but she is now.
Yeah, they celebrate. The younger that they get baptized, they celebrate it. They have demonstrations at the assemblies and the meetings and stuff, and they'll like hold them up as an example. Look, this 7-year-old got baptized. This 8 or 9-year-old got baptized. Isn't that incredible? So young yet so ready to love Jehovah, yet like a young boy should. You know, it's just really sad.
It's really kind of gross, actually.
Yeah.
And then our last guest, Jen, if you just want to quickly go over your story before we get into questions. Yes, and thank you.
Okay. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was raised Baptist, and for the life of me, I looked back at my old church, and I couldn't figure out if it was like IFB and IFB. It was just like generic Baptist. It was like Northern Baptist because I'm up here in New York, and
New York buddies.
so New York. I'm on the other side. I'm in 716.
Okay.
So anyway, I got baptized by choice at 18 years old because when you're raised Baptist, you can pick pretty much 5 years old up to your death if you want to get baptized. And before that, though, you have to ask Jesus into your heart. And I did that when I was like 7, and then at 10 and 11 and 12, because I never felt it stuck. But by the time 18 rolled around, I figured, it's time to get baptized. And so my deconversion, along with my shunning of my family, there's no shunning, so to speak, in Baptist. It's just like people cut you out slowly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just perforated lines that just slowly tear away, and they're gone. They're just gone. They walk away, and you're like, so it's layers and layers to the story. But the final blow was I was on my way out of religion. I had to work every Sunday, and so you don't get that re-up of indoctrination every Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
So I finally decided to put my foot down to my family's massive emails that one uncle would send out to 50 people. He would BCC and CC every person on his list, and they were, Alex Jones level, focus on the family, all these like, beware the gay agenda, beware this, beware that, Obama's doing this. And I finally put my foot down because one of the letters he sent was about the you wear black all day at school, for like every LGBT that takes their own life, or that day, you know what I mean? I forgot what day it was, but my kids were participating in it. So when they picked your name out of the bucket, you had to go change into black and represent for that day another LGBTQ person who took their life. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I allowed my kids to participate. It was a charity event. My uncle sent a letter saying, don't let your kids participate. He had no idea my kids were participating in this. Okay, no idea. Because he's from New Jersey. He goes, don't let your kids participate in this. It's from the gay agenda. They want to take over the world, blah, blah, blah. And it was just, I finally put my foot down, and I'm like, you know what? I can't believe you're saying this. Do you even know? Do you even know what you're talking about? This talking point's wrong. This talking point's wrong. This talking point's wrong. And he's like, oh, how dare you? I'm your elder. I'm your uncle. And it got to the point where, because that's my mom's side of the family, 100% Baptist. It got to the point where I was going over questions with him in email, which I thought were between him and I. And he had blind CC'd the entire family.
Wow. That's dirty. That's a
Yeah.
little low down.
And I was trying to have an honest and open communication with him about church, about life, about everything, and he was playing dirty. So I found out because my sister told me, Gordon sent everybody these emails. I'm like, what? So she showed me, and everybody was blind CC'd on this. So I got human, and I asked him, so what do you think about, I have the email, I have to pull it up. Give me a second here. This is from 2012. 2012. This is the radical homosexual are infiltrating the United States Congress, and they have a plan of indoctrination. That's what started this. And I said, can I just ask you a few questions? Am I the only one who's ever questioned your socio-political beliefs? Do you think homosexuality is a disease to be cured? Is the world more or less than 6,000 years old? And all that stuff. I went down a slew of, it cut off on my save here, but I went down like 50 questions, and everyone was just a little dig at what I knew he believed, what I knew Baptists believed, and it wasn't meant to be insulting, but just like question, what do I think about that? But then by the time I got to the bottom, I put, do any of these questions bother you? Because every email that we have just exchanged really bothers me. And he didn't care.
Of course not. I'm sorry.
So I mean, some of them were so basic, like, do you think men and women are equal? Do you partake of alcohol, tobacco, or pork? Stuff like that. And then the last email he ever sent me was, to niece Jennifer, I know you don't think there's a homosexual agenda, but I hope you reconsider after reading the article below. And the legislation has already been drafted. And it goes for private and Christian schools too. Now, granted, he put all his children in Christian schools, K through 12, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The day of silence tomorrow isn't about bullying your tolerance. It's the tip of the iceberg and desensitizing the entire nation so nobody will even think of protesting. Never mind, it will be against the law and labeled as hate speech if you refuse to let your first grader be taught that a gay lifestyle is normal. God help our nation if this gets through Congress, because Tsar Obama will sign it. This is how long ago this was. And he may pass Congress without any permission. He's really good at that. So that's my mom's side of the family. They pretty much disowned me after that because they just think that I'm like a lapsed Christian, that I don't go to church anymore. I never came out in the Christmas letter and said, hey, Jen's an atheist now. I just stopped participating in things. I stopped going to church. I stopped sending out religious birthday cards, religious Christmas cards. I stopped inviting, people to church and stuff like that. But that, standing up for a non-religious belief of being an ally, and he just cut me out.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that it just seems that for a lot of people, the connection that they have with other family members comes directly just from that root of religion. Like it seems like that was all that your uncle seemed to have with you, and that's very
Yeah.
sad. I'm so
And
sorry,
it's
Jen.
it's weird because it's hard to put into words because it's religious for him, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
because
We're gonna.
my
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I did have the first layer of that shunning. I was already the black sheep.
Mhm.
Okay, I was the first person in my mom's line. Generations and generations of people who have lived in this country, who have been raised Baptist from cradle to grave. I was the first person to ever have a baby before they got married.
Yeah.
So that scarred me as the black sheep. Boom, right there. Right there. Boom. And then I went to my pastor at the time. Now, this baby is 25 years old. Okay. But 25 years ago, I went to my pastor, and my sister had a baby at the same time. So we both had 25-year-old daughters. And we asked, can you do dedication Palm Sunday? Because dedication for infants in the Baptist church is like a christening without the water. Okay, for like Catholics. So we said, there's another church baby, my sister's kid and mine. Can we do them all on Palm Sunday? Because that's typically when they did the baby dedications for like the year, you know. And they, oh, sure, yeah, bring them in. You know, we'll do it right at the end, close of service. It'll be the quick dedication of the babies. I get there, go up to talk to the pastor's wife, go up to talk to the pastor. Pastor goes, oh, I can't dedicate your baby. I said, why not? My sister's here. Did you read a book? You know? He goes, oh, no, your baby's a bastard, and there's no hope for her. And
That's lovely. Hey, so is my kid, but I don't think it matters. But thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for all. Thank you for everybody sharing. We're gonna move on to questions. That's why we're here. John, why don't you go ahead and start with what you think is the most important?
Okay. I suppose the most important thing to ask in a project like this is if I should even do it. Like so I wrote my first question would be, would it be good for someone who was estranged from their family to have something to send them that might speak for them and advocate for them? Or do you think it would be better for a disowned person to simply accept the separation?
Is
Who
this
wants
just for
to hit it?
anybody?
Yeah, everybody.
are we going?
Everybody who has an answer.
Do you have an answer that you want to hit, Rudy?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
So it basically just comes down to should they, fight it or accept it is like the basics of the question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that depends a lot on the person's circumstances. I mean, I felt like it was important to fight it when I at least was initially disfellowshipped because it was very clear to me that my family was only shunning me on the basis of a religious mandate and not because they wanted to. They wanted to have me in their life. If they actually didn't want me around, like Jen was saying with her family, like they apparently her uncle just straight up didn't like her anymore. That in that case, it's probably better to just accept it. But if you feel like there's some hope of having a relationship with your family, something that my therapist told me to do was to write letters to each of them, not to try to deconvert them or anything, but just to lay out how I felt and why I left and everything that I felt like I needed to say to them. And once I had said what I needed to say, then I had to be at the accepting phase of just like I said what I needed to say. I said what I could. I made the apologies I needed to make. I expressed what I needed to express. And then if nothing comes of that, then you do just kind of have to let it go and learn to accept the situation that you're in.
Yeah, I figure I can add some input on this also. I think your original question was, should you write something up that people in this situation can send to family? Is that right?
Yes, like is
Okay.
that a worthwhile thing to have out
Hmm.
there in the world?
I would say it would be a worthwhile thing to have. Yeah. There are some people who are in that situation who could certainly use it. As Rudy said, it would be on a case by case basis. But something else to consider is in all likelihood, you're not going to be able to change their minds in most cases, I'd say, in the majority of cases. And you're going to have to find happiness from within yourself. Well, like find your own happiness, find your own reasons for being happy, and don't hinge your happiness on them or what they do. A lot of the time, ex Jehovah's Witnesses find peace and happiness through understanding that other people have experienced what they've experienced. This isn't like a solitary journey that you're going through alone forever. You know, I mean, there are three of us here that have practically the exact same story. You know, all the way down to there's a cultural thing that we all share that's like really unique to like Jehovah's Witnesses specifically. And more broadly, there's a cultural thing that all of us share, who have been shunned by family members, including Jen. Um, so there are like spheres that we all kind of share, and finding happiness for us should be based on the fact that we aren't alone. I think we should find it in solidarity rather than find it from the people who are separating themselves from us. But yeah, to answer more directly, I do think it would be valuable to have something like that for the people who could use it. Just make it clear that you can't hinge your happiness on what they're going to do. You have to find it elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah, next one, John.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything about that, or?
I just want to say I have to completely agree with Owen that it is a great place to find your happiness is in solidarity with people that have like circumstances, especially being so fresh out of the organization myself, to find a community online that understands, even if we come from different walks of how it happened, the feeling of being shunned by your family. And absolutely, this community is what has helped me heal a lot faster than what I had expected. And it's absolutely worthwhile because I think more people, if we can reach more people to show them that there are a group of people out there that understand what it feels like and know the pain and just accepting that pain together. Granted, I still have hope for my family that someday they'll wake up, but it's a matter of it's not anything that I have the power of doing, and it's accepting that, but it's still being able to share my experience and hope other people can hear that experience, relate, and find comfort through it.
It's called the fallacy of change in cognitive behavioral therapy. You have to find happiness outside of the assumption that someone else is going to change to make you happy. You have to find it outside of that.
Yeah, I think that's important. Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. Do you think that after someone has been disowned for religious reasons, that the people who disown them would be willing to watch a video that person subsequently sent to them?
Ooh, that's a tough question because I think it depends heavily on which denomination that they left. Jehovah's Witnesses are trained to not watch apostate material. If they think that you're an apostate, they will not watch that most of the time. A small subset of Jehovah's Witnesses might. As far as like ex-Baptists go, I don't know. What do you think, Jen? Do you think that they might, like your uncle, would he watch a video that you sent him, or no?
Kiss the bottom of my foot.
If it's given to him by someone who is not me, like if his wife, who still is in communication with me,
Mhm.
you know, or one of his kids, but his kids are all deep into the religion, but you know, so to speak, if it came from, like, even my mother wouldn't be able to convince him to watch something from me, but maybe his wife would.
Mhm.
And it all depends on the person, the religion, their level of indoctrination, their level of how deep they are in their own religion, stuck in mud. Their stubbornness, their willing to change, their acceptance. You know, it's person to person. It's
I
so hard
personally-
to predict.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Rudy.
I personally think a video like that would have a lot more success just being shared around social media and on larger platforms, and not like, if I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see a video, I don't think that somebody's talking to me, you know, unless they tagged me in the post. I'm not going to think, oh, someone's trying to tell me this is how I'm supposed to act towards so-and-so. Just, you know, if a video like that just happens to get a lot of views and a lot of shares, I think that is something that would be much more likely to hit an audience like Jehovah's Witnesses. They might just see something about, maybe it says, maybe instead of using the word shunning or disfellowshipping, it says something about like socially ostracized for leaving their religion. And the funny thing is that witnesses are kind of big on that, because they like to make a big deal about how other religions will socially ostracize people trying to become Jehovah's Witnesses, but they don't see any irony.
They've even written about it. It's almost comical.
It really is. And I definitely have to agree that if it can reach a wider platform versus directly sending it to family, because I know from experience that completely ignoring like apostate anything, because when I was still in, my dad became an apostate. So it was living with someone labeled as an apostate and having my entire family telling me, don't watch anything he shows you, don't listen to him. I have whole portions of our conversations that I know happened, but just blocked out. I can't even remember them, because that's that immediate, you are just programmed to ignore all of it.
Yeah, and on that note, let me give you a recommendation. Let me give you my recommendation. I think that it could be beneficial. The moment you start saying things that are like aggressive, or that really start making these people think, they're going to shut down. They're going to stop listening. They're going to close the video and walk away completely. So my recommendation would be to make two versions. One version would be what you want them to hear, and that's for us. And then the other version would be trying to communicate that in a way that won't make them shut down. Here's what I have to say to you, and then make it mild and tread lightly. And then here is what I want you to know, really, and really like lay into them, you know, like tell them really how we feel, because they're probably never going to see that one.
Like
that would be
maybe
my
like a
suggestion.
link in the description of the video, like if you want to hear more from these interviews, blah blah blah, or something like that.
Okay.
I have a question really quick. In terms of how you guys feel about your families turning their backs on you, and this is something you can think of and tell us at the end. I just want one word that describes it best. If it's, you know, you feel like they abandoned you or anything like that, that would be really helpful. You could think about it, and then we'll get back to it. Just one word to describe how it made you feel for them to do so. John, go ahead with your next question. If you want.
I'm pretty sure my next question is already answered, but I'm going to read it anyway. If they were willing to watch it, do you think they would come into it with an extreme bias already against it already in place? I mean, I've heard enough to know the answer to that.
Yeah, let me give you one more thing on that, though, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you're having a conversation and you're trying to deprogram somebody, you want to have a give and take. if you give them a concession, then they're more willing to give you a concession. So if you made a video where you listed off a few things about which they're correct, maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's something in there. Or just be really kind and nice in the opener, and they'll be more willing to concede this thing or that thing later on. That's kind of the psychology behind street epistemology too. So maybe that could be helpful.
Can you please be quiet?
So
Okay.
that answer for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do the next one.
And it's, you guys are preempting my questions here. My next question was, what sort of tone would keep from scaring them away if they do watch it?
Yeah.
Definitely, I go more with the just human interest point of view rather than trying to make a pointed statement about any specific behavior. You know, it's kind of like when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I watched a documentary about an Amish girl being shunned from her community, and I literally didn't think anything of it until later on. And that kind of sitting in the back of my head made me start to think about things differently. But
what do you mean you didn't think anything of it?
Like, oh, that's so interesting, but that's terrible the way they treated her. But I didn't think of the connection to myself personally.
Same.
But I was open to hearing that story.
So maybe frame it differently?
Yeah. Like just approaching it more from like a human interest point of view than of I am specifically trying to tell these people about how the people that they're hurting feel. Because if you go into it that pointed, none of those people are going to listen. I feel like if you frame the information that way, none of the people you're trying to reach are going to want to hear it.
Agreed.
It's when they start to feel directly called out. Like when they can tell it's about them, that's the shutdown.
Got to keep their guard down.
Well, Critical Cripple has an interesting point. Could you bait and switch it, make it about another religion, and apply it to other religions? So,
yeah, but that complicates it because, you know, if you're trying to make like a general video that could apply to anybody who's shunned, then who do you know, what other religion do you put in as an example? I mean, Amish people aren't really allowed to use the internet, so that may actually be a good bait and switch, like a good example. Amish.
I think they just mean in terms of like, well, I'm not leaving religion altogether. I just have a different faith. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but
right.
Yeah, just having a discussion about leaving one faith for another, not necessarily becoming an atheist, and having, you know, a variety of different religions being discussed so it doesn't feel targeted.
Yeah. The moment they feel targeted, they shut down and that's it. Conversation's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, John.
Okay. The next question after that was, would it be a good idea to change tones, perhaps by starting gently and ending harshly, or should it maintain an even tone? And I guess that even gets into some of what we were already talking about. But
well, go ahead, Rudy.
I don't think ending a video like that with something a little bit more to the point and like, you know, these people have been hurt and what can we do about that? What can you do about that? What can families do about that? Would be fine, because if that person has watched that far into the video at that point, they're probably a lot more receptive to a what can you do about that type of message if they're already invested in hearing those people's stories.
Yeah, I think it would be well, really the question is, do people shut down completely and block out everything that they just heard after they feel offended by something that they heard? And I think they may absorb some of it, but I would recommend treading lightly throughout the entirety of the video personally. I think I would say just make two different versions, one for the family and one for us. Things that you want to say to your family and things that you're actually going to say to the family. I don't know.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Next one.
Should it appeal to the Bible, refute the Bible, or not mention the Bible at all?
Ooh, that's tough because each religion has like its own justifications for the different policies that they have, for lack of a better term. I would say, well, I guess, do you want to appeal to the morality of what they're doing, or do you want to appeal to the biblical like precedent and justification? I would say maybe appeal to the morality and then point out that, a moral God would never do this. And that, this is immoral. I mean, this is blatantly, obviously immoral. Everybody should see that at its face. Why would God sanction something like that, if he's all good?
And I think it's definitely important if scriptural error or inconsistency with morality is part of someone's deconversion story, then that's part of it. I don't think that should necessarily be taken out, but I definitely wouldn't put that at the forefront of the conversation, I guess.
So you think you'd focus on the morality of it rather than the biblical aspect?
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily leave it out because, if it's part of someone's story, then it's part of someone's story. And I
Sure.
think it would be 100% honest to try to kind of just put that aside as if that isn't necessarily part of it, but not focusing on it necessarily.
I think my question that relates though, is there anything specific within scripture or the Bible that would lend to saying don't, treat your family like this?
Totally. The Bible does not actually support shunning. Jehovah's Witnesses cherry pick one or two verses, but by the end of it, the Bible does not actually support that. There's a verse in the Gospels where they started to shun people, and then they got a lot of pushback from the congregation. That's the verse that Jehovah's Witnesses cite. Don't even dine with such a man. That is where the Bible endorses shunning. And then later, they get pushback. The congregation says this is wrong. We're not going to do this. And I forget who it was. Paul, maybe, who's writing this?
Paul.
Yeah. Paul wrote another letter to the congregation after saying don't even dine with such a man, and said, you know what? You're right. We don't want to cause undue suffering to people with shunning. We're not going to do this. Never mind. Forgive them. So the Bible briefly endorses it for like a chapter and then reverses that endorsement immediately after. Jehovah's Witnesses pretend that reversal isn't even in there. So yes, the Bible explicitly condemns shunning in specific parts.
I would even, talk about the story of the prodigal son. That's definitely one that makes me emotional when I think about it, because it's like, if you claim to follow the Bible, Jesus told this really great story this one time about this kid that just went off and did what he wanted to do, but his father still welcomed him back just because he was happy he was there.
And
that's a really good point. Thank you, Rudy.
It's funny how there's even an old drama of that prodigal son story that even witnesses twist then, and it's definitely sad to see that he's only welcome back if he is willing to go back into the religion just as he was before. So I think it's really interesting how they even take that wonderful story of the prodigal son where his father welcomed him back and twist it to meet exactly what they want it to meet.
Yeah. And
I got a
go ahead,
taste
Rudy.
of that when I found out I was going to be homeless, and I called my parents and was like, hey, can I just like sleep in my old bed? I'm not going to bother anybody. I'm literally just going to like go there when it's late and everybody's asleep and leave in the morning before anybody's awake. And they said, well, you don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness again. So no.
Yeah, exactly. I also appreciate the fact that, this is a good example of the culture that Jehovah's Witnesses have. passingly mentioned drama, and all of us know exactly what that is, except the audience.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? It's basically like Jehovah's Witnesses hold like this little play. Basically, they hold a play like what is it, 2 or 3 times a year? They do a
Well,
custom
now it's
play
all
with actors.
movies. Now it's
Right. Okay,
all
so they've cut
movies.
dramas out completely. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
got to be in one of the last actual onstage dramas that they had.
I'm so jealous. I wanted to
see
be one of those people. I wasn't spiritual enough.
the
Neither was I.
prodigal's
They just
good.
needed to fill a role for someone who was Ethiopian, and I was the blackest person
Oh.
Of
anyone
course.
knew. So
Of course.
Oh goodness.
That's rough.
But even
God,
even the
dude.
prodigal son is like a movie. I think it's still up, but I they've done movies for the past I don't know how many conventions. I mean, majority of it's all videos, movies now
Yeah.
because that's what it's become. But I mean, I was still in and at the convention when they showed, like Remember the Wife of Lot and those ones. So it's kind of wild looking at those now and going, I was there when they started showing just movies and videos at the conventions.
Right.
we have gotten wildly off topic.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. It reminds me of the like I said, my mother is Catholic, so we had passion plays around I think at Easter time, which is just basically them acting out Jesus getting crucified, and we're all supposed to love it and find some kind of spirituality in it. When in fact, I think back on it and looking at like I don't know my 6-year-old self watching this stuff play out in real time in front of you as the guy is beaten and bloody and all this and then crucified. It's
Really
fucked
messed
It's
up,
pretty
right?
fucked up. So yeah.
God.
Yeah.
The next one, John.
Okay. And would sentimentality help, like appealing to memories?
Would sentimentality help? That's a good question.
For some people.
Yeah,
For some.
I would say that.
Yeah. I mean, because it's not like all of my experiences with my family were bad. That's kind of the reason that I wish I had them back, is because we had a good life until I decided that I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, for the most part.
I think the thing is, there's like this biological drive to love somebody and be connected to them who you've been connected to your whole life. There's this psychological thing that Jehovah's Witnesses and other groups like that are intentionally trying to break, and they're using every tactic that they have to break people of this psychological drive, threatening them with the same punishment. If you talk to a disfellowship person and you associate with them regularly and you're close to them, you risk being shunned yourself, things like that. So yeah, I think if you appeal to that base instinct of being close to somebody that you've been close to, that may be your best bet.
And I have a related question to that, which was, would appealing to any other traditions or norms help besides, the religious aspect?
The Jehovah's Witnesses all have shared traditions, many of them anyways, and they don't really share those traditions with the outside world. Like, they don't celebrate holidays, they don't celebrate Christmas, don't celebrate birthdays or any of that stuff. All of the celebrations and traditions they have, all other Jehovah's Witnesses have too. So I don't know if shared traditions would help or appealing to that. I guess it would be on a case-by-case basis. If there's a shared tradition or norm that you can use to connect with somebody, then I would say use it. But it would be hard to identify specific ones on an individual basis, I'd say.
Yeah, especially because Witnesses' shared traditions are pretty much entirely religion-based. When you aren't allowed to celebrate birthdays, holidays, anything like that. When I think of Jehovah's Witness traditions. It's always the memorial, the conventions, the assemblies, celebrating baptisms, things of that nature, or weddings, all heavily based in the religion. So it would be kind of hard to go after that target when they're all based within.
Mhm.
Any, next one, John?
Would appealing to responsibility help?
I would say no personally. What do you think, Rudy?
I think it depends on I think that's definitely dependent on the person. I mean, uh, there are high numbers of suicide among shunned Jehovah's Witnesses for sure. I think that and you can definitely appeal to, you know, a parent's responsibility to take care of their children and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't work for everybody though. Because it's not like you're going to be telling somebody for the first time, "Oh, no shit, I'm supposed to love my kids." Like
Yeah.
that never occurred to me. Like it's not like it's going to be news.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely think one of the big parts of the religion is programming out that responsibility. You're absolutely taught to love Jehovah above all, including your children.
Mm-mm.
It's
And
explicitly said, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
explicitly
God.
said frequently that it is Jehovah first, everything and everyone else after. So that responsibility is frequently removed, and I'd say witnesses that are shunning their kids, they're one taught it's for the best, and two taught, well, that's just it. They're not your problem anymore.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
that might not be the case for, you know, someone shunning or disowning a family member when it isn't religiously mandated. That
Exactly.
might not necessarily be the case. So it might
Yeah.
be a lot more effective in that case.
Gotcha. I just, as a parent myself, I cannot fathom there being anything in this world, God or otherwise, that would make me turn my back on my kid. I can't compute that. So it's just hard for me. Um, any more, John?
Um, I guess this one is kind of related to the Bible one. Would it help to appeal to what God may or may not want?
It might.
I
I
would
mean,
say include that one before responsibility, personally. Do you think?
yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to
Mm.
agree for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when your motivation for shunning is religiously motivated, thinking about, okay, dogma aside, just think about what, like, God wants the best for you. Do you really think that the best thing is being apart from your family? Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess it really boils down to like what avenues or what specific talking points or pieces of propaganda have Jehovah's Witnesses and other destructive religions used on people the most. Like they really lay into the responsibility piece, like we said a minute ago. Jehovah's Witnesses specifically say your responsibility is to Jehovah above everybody else. But they also kind of encourage you to, like, learn and study and understand God, So maybe the whole appealing to what God would really want bit, maybe that would be more effective.
Mhm.
That's definitely
Wait,
one of the things that broke me out was, is this what God really thinks? Having that question at the forefront of my mind.
Okay.
we have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap things up. Unless there's any other questions that you think are super important, John.
Um,
Otherwise, I can just send them
let me,
out to them afterwards.
um, I guess these aren't terribly important. I, uh, did I question their own motives? Um, would it help at all to involve myself personally, or just keep myself out of it? Like the question I asked, would my own status as a family man, provide any credibility, or should I just not involve myself personally?
What do you mean? Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Um, do I just be the should I just act as the voice, the narrator of about the topic itself, or would it help to say, hey, I'm a father, I have a son that and I wouldn't be able to do this or that, or should I just leave myself out of it entirely and stick to the subject?
I've seen both approaches with similar topics, and I think that you should just do whatever you feel most comfortable with. I don't think that either is necessarily a bad choice.
I think, yeah, I think either one would probably, neither one would be better or worse than the other in this case. Although, yeah, that's what I'll go with.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I think that's it then. As far as and the other, there's a few others, but I don't think they're terribly important.
Like I said, I can send them to them afterwards too. We can. It's not like they're never going to talk to us again. Well, I don't know about you, but no, just kidding.
Mhm.
No, we're shunning you now.
Yeah, that was the point of this whole thing. It was getting cut off after this. If you could just have that one word that describes how it made you feel when your family turned their backs on you, and then we'll just wrap up. Rudy, I'll start with you.
Heartbroken.
I guess mine would be, I'm going to use two words. I apologize.
That's okay.
Crushing emptiness. Crushing emptiness.
Yeah, I feel that. Go ahead, Ash.
Just lost, completely lost.
Jen?
Gotta turn my mic back on. I would say disappointed. Just an utter disappointment, letdown. Just like, really?
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning, everybody's links below are below, so make sure you check out everyone's channels. I'm personally offering that if anybody who's watching or watches in the future has something to add to this that you think might help John at all, please feel free to reach out to me. My DMs are open on Twitter. And obviously, if you guys have anything else you want to add, go ahead and let me know at any point in time. But I will say my thanks first. I super duper appreciate you guys coming and doing this. I know it's not easy getting everybody's schedules together, and this was just something that John and I talked about working on together, and I just really super duper appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with us. John, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, just I want to thank everybody very much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it, and it helps me out a great deal as somebody who hasn't had to deal with this. And the topic itself is something that I care a lot about, and I want to understand it better and contribute in a positive way. And I absolutely need to hear what you have to say about it, and I just appreciate your willingness to do that.
I think one thing we missed was this whole thing started because, like you said, that letter that you saw, I'd sent him a tweet that had a letter from somebody who was disowning their child, and it affected him. And both of us as parents really felt that and had like a hard time trying to wrap our heads around it and understand it. Like I said, as a parent, it's hard to really, especially since we're both atheists too, so that might be a difference, but just trying to figure out why and what we can do, because it, treating anybody like that at all is awful, but family, it just...
I suppose the opposite would be if my kid became a diehard Christian. I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. Like, they still have a bed under my roof and a kiss goodnight and everything. There's none of that you're no son of mine stuff. Like, I can't
Yeah.
imagine that.
Yeah, it's hard to understand for me now how somebody could do that. Really, I would never ever do that, no matter what. You know, I just don't understand how somebody. I mean, I shunned my brother, in all fairness, when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. So I guess I was just following orders to some
Yeah.
degree, but to make a conscious decision like that, something else, man.
And plus, you
See,
were a kid too. I mean,
I was,
it's
yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
I was encouraged to shun my dad when I moved out because I moved out at 19, and I actually moved in with my boss at the time, and she was one of like the key factors in pulling me out of everything. But I was heavily encouraged to just not speak to my dad anymore, and I just couldn't do it. I mean, he was my dad.
Yeah.
No matter what our relationship had been, even if though it was not good, he was still my dad. I took him to meet my partner at the time, and I was counseled by my elders for having my dad meet my partner, and it was, well, he's my dad.
Mm.
That's where we came from, man. It's rough.
Well, like I said, thank you guys so much for everybody. Thank you in the audience for coming and participating. And I also really want to thank my friends Bree and Critical Cripple. Bree, my producer, BrainBug. Their link is in the description, and Critical Cripple for helping us out. Not used to having this many people in the audience, so I super appreciate it. I hope everybody comes back. John's on the channel all the time, so if you enjoy Dark Matters, silly antics. We usually are a little bit lighter than this, but we do spend some time together on this channel. So I hope people come back. But thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, everybody in the audience. And I guess we will see you all next time. And don't forget to think critically. Night, everybody.
Take care.